Helly wakes after memory-splitting surgery beside a sci-fi desk, with Mark's voice like he's enrolling her in a cooking class, not asking for a survey. Too busy to heed Helly's questions, he insisted she fill out the survey. Worse than my old job's icebreakers, Helly thought. All she wanted was to escape. She opened the door and shouted, "Hey, Ainio." The door wouldn't budge, so she calmed herself down and began negotiating with Mark. "Just give me 5 questions. 5. That's all. So what's next based on your answers?" "All right, let's get this show on the road." First question, "What's your name?" But she could barely think straight. She couldn't even remember her own name. The next questions were equally basic, all about her personal details. She felt like in a trivia contest with no prize at all. Panic set in, and the ghost of fear started swelling around her, ready to send her over the edge. Just then, the door behind swung open, perfect timing. Mark walked in. He began explaining the onboarding process. Helly, on edge, asked Mark, "Am I your pet?" Mark obviously denied it, but didn't elaborate much. "So, what's my name?" "Harry." "Your name is Helly Heliar." Mark seemed stumped by more questions, just like a robot reading a script. Listening to his steedish ramblings, she finally couldn't help it. She was still plotting her escape when she punched Mark, but surprisingly, he didn't even get mad. Mark remained serious, mentioning he felt uneasy too, even contemplating a mini-murder. But eventually, he chose to accept his new life. By the time he started repeating himself, Helly had completely... Mark helplessly glanced at the surveillance as the supervisor watched. Suddenly, he changed the topic, asking her to repeat, "I want to leave." She had asked that twice already. The third time would earn her a ticket to freedom. They walked through a long, white hallway to a door labelled Separation Zone Threshold, which suspiciously sounded like a fancy name for restricted area. But when she finally pushed the door, she ended up back in the hallway. Once, twice, 3 times. She thought it was all a dream, but the truth was she had escaped only to be pulled right back. She wanted to escape her work persona and take her life persona, but it didn't happen. Helly reluctantly accepted her new job. She was guided into an office, at which point the assistant manager thoughtfully played a video for her before commencing work. As the video played, she gradually and slowly came to realize that she had actually exhausted all her options. She sat down at her desk, where her co-workers were friendly. Mark began explaining her job duties. Her job was to transfer some random numbers from the computer. She had no idea what they meant into her head. It was so ridiculous that it almost made her cry. And then she had to write that work down on her phone just to add insult to injury. Her job was to jot computer numbers on her phone numbers she didn't want to remember. Helly was totally confused, and before she could wrap her head around anything, the company threw her a welcome party. She could munch on fruit and play getting-to-know-you games, and as if that wasn't awkward enough, she scribbled resignation on a sticky note. Ignoring all the stares, she entered the elevator with her note, activating the alarm code. Sirens blared throughout the building. The next moment she was about to be escorted by security, but thankfully, Mark jumped in, claiming he hadn't briefed the new hire properly. Instead, he got her taken to the break room, a black room with a long, narrow hallway devoid of cameras. The next day, everyone worked as usual, unaware of time passing outside. Therefore, their sense of time was only measured by non-stop work, living in a temporal black hole without even the sensation of sleep. Helly asked her co-workers if they didn't find this non-stop state strange. They just shrugged and replied, "We've gotten used to it." Even when Mark was taken to the little black room, they didn't seem to care if he'd face any punishment. They always wore a detached expression, like uncaring work machines. Helly tried to figure out what those numbers were that she was deleting on the screen. Her co-workers didn't know either. They could only imagine giving this boring work some grand significance. Everyone thought differently. Some felt they were cleaning up dangerous sea creatures, while others thought they were censoring swear words in movies. But Helly didn't want to speculate. She was simply terrified of the numbers she was deleting, but she knew they thought that way simply because they realized this was just work. Just do what you're told. The meaning didn't matter. Sometimes a little self-soothing was necessary. She didn't want to self-soothe because she fundamentally didn't want to stay here at all. She tried to find a way to take her message out, tearing words in half to write on her arm. She crumpled sticky notes into balls, stuffed them into her wallet, and swallowed them whole. The company had assured her these messages would be recognized. She had to give up, arriving at the Eternal Zone, a museum of the CEO family antiques. A stream proudly recounted their family achievements, and everyone worshipped them like they were gods. Helly couldn't bear the cult-like atmosphere. She grabbed paper and dashed to the Separation Zone Threshold unnoticed. She vigorously smashed the glass door and decisively tossed her note outside. This time, Mark couldn't help her. She was locked in the little black room, greeted by a lie detector and a long list of confessions. "I'm just taking my time to sift through the information here, Helly, since it pertains to religious content. You really need to check it out first.